I've got a headache. I'm very tired. It's all quiet. Those people coming in late, don't feel bad. It's absolutely fine. I understand that last night was traumatic for some people. Who went to the after party? Yeah, good people. So, big thanks then. Big thanks to the guys at Nutshell for putting that on. Much appreciated. I've got a bit of bad news for you, I'm afraid. That our first speaker that's about to come on is one of the most enthusiastic and energetic and quite loud speakers that you will come across. But before I introduce him, just to remind you to check in via Gowalla, so you get your iPad, because apparently every person that checks in is going to get an iPad. Or I might be misunderstanding that. But let's commit Gowalla to that on stage right now. Every person is going to get you have a chance of winning an iPad, but definitely do it. Gowalla's an awesome service that I love very much. Okay, so let's move on to our first speaker. Our first speaker is really building on the themes that Aaron were talking about yesterday morning. In actual fact, Aaron referenced Aral quite a lot. He talked about the feather app. Do you remember the feather app? The one with the little bird that filled up when you were tweeting? Well, that's Aral's work, and he's going to come on now and talk about beyond usability and the art of experience design. So put your hands together very quietly for Aral Balkan.
Thank you, Paul.
Enjoy it.
Hi, everyone. Oh, wow, people are still coming in. Hello. How was the party last night? Yeah? I'm really sorry. Was it that good? Shit, I'm really sorry I missed it. It is awesome to be here in New York. I know I sound American, but I'm not. I actually live in the UK, and me and my girlfriend flew over on Sunday. I'm not going to embarrass you. Flew over on Sunday, and we've been having a great time. Although I am slightly anxious about leaving. Have you guys heard about these TSA new regulations stuff? Yeah, you have. Like apparently they're calling it. What are they calling it? Rape or scan or rape on Twitter. So apparently, like they have these new scanners, nudie scanners that you get to go into, or you get patted down. I'm kind of looking on the bright side of it, actually, because I mean, at least you're guaranteed to become intimately familiar with at least one American before you leave. Yeah. As a geek, I think that's better odds than I'm used to. So that's kind of cool. I don't know, but I do travel a lot as well, and as I travel, as an experienced designer, I try to keep an eye out for things that are interesting experiences. So that was not the best segue ever, but I was in Bruges recently, which is beautiful. Who's been to Bruges here in Belgium? Beautiful town, right? Wow, you really had a good time. Are you still at the party? No. So I was in Bruges, and I was on my way back at the train station, and I saw one of these, a drink vending machine. You get coffees and teas, and I thought, hey, I'm in Bruges. I should, try something typically Belgian, right? So I looked at the list of drinks that they have, and there was espresso, coffee, I could make that out, okay. And I thought, okay, so what's the most popular drink then in Belgium? It must be the one that they put at the top, right? Because most people want it, right? So I looked at the top and it was Doosering Suiker. So I'm like, that sounds really cool and native. I'll go for some Doosering Suiker, please. So I tapped Doosering Suiker, I'm waiting, I'm all like enthusiastic. I'm like, gonna get some Doosering Suiker for the first time. Nothing happens. I press Doosering Suiker again. I'm like, this must be really good. It's taken some time. Oh yeah, this is gonna be great. And it took me a while to realize, I finally did, that Doosering Suiker apparently means more sugar. So, but you have to realize, I went by not knowing the language, I went entirely by the affordance of this machine in front of me. I thought, a list, I understand some things, so the other things must be the same. And that actually is very related to what I want to talk to you about today, which is the art of experience design. Now, to start off with, these are cute little kittens. Yes, they love you. And this is me. I love you too. I'm at Aral. Please feel free to follow me on Twitter. I don't bite. And I'm an interaction designer. I'm also a developer, but I'm going to concentrate on the design side of what I do today. But what does an interaction designer do? What does interaction design involve? Well, it involves a lot of different disciplines. There are elements of graphic design, motion design, so graphic design, form, typography, repetition, all of these things. Motion design, as in designing linear motion, animation, etc. And information architecture, how we actually organize the information in what we're doing. But the key thing in interaction design is interaction. And interaction is actually very difficult to get right. And here's why. Think about, as a human being, how difficult it is for you to communicate with and understand other human beings. How many times have you been in a situation where you have all of your facilities available to you? You have visual cues, you have oral cues, and yet you still misunderstand someone. Are you thinking, are they being sarcastic? Do they love me? Do they hate me? Do I look good in this? I don't know. And you have all of your facilities, and you're two human beings trying to communicate. What happens if you remove some of those facilities? What happens if you're on the phone with someone? How much easier is it to misunderstand someone if you're on the phone with them? You've suddenly lost all of these visual cues that you can rely on face to face. You can see that I'm non-threatening, I'm probably a nice guy, you know, and I'm really happy to be here. You can see all of that from my face. If I was on the phone to you, you would lose some of those. And it's so much easier to misunderstand people. We only have the tone of voice to go by. Now let's take that one step further. How much easier is it to misunderstand someone if you're texting them, or if you're IMing them, or if you're emailing them, or you're on a forum? Flame wars, you know, began on the internet for a reason. We've just removed both visual cues and oral cues, and we only have text to go by to understand each other. And what do? We try to compensate, because we're losing a lot of humanity in every step of the way. We're losing bits of ourselves as we're trying to communicate. So what do? We try to compensate. We put little smileys in there, right? We say, hey, that was a joke, you know, wink. And we try to inject some of that humanity back into it. But it's so much easier to misunderstand each other if we've removed all of those facilities. Now, to understand how difficult it is to do interaction design, remove one of the human beings from the equation completely and try to craft a thing that talks to a human being. And then, at that point, you'll begin to understand what a mammoth task we have in front of us. Because we've lost visual cues, we've lost oral cues, we've lost humanity. And we need to inject that back somehow. And that's what we do as experience designers, as interaction designers. So what we do has very little to do with being able to draw a straight line, or with pixel pushing, or with making things pretty. These are not the things that we do. What we do has a lot to do with psychology, with neuroscience, with linguistics, with sociology, with philosophy. In other words, what we do is about understanding human beings. And we need to understand human beings before we can design for human beings. And that's what we do. And that's very important today. And I'll tell you why in a little bit. But it always wasn't. It wasn't always the case. Back in the early days of computing, when computers filled up entire rooms and cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, computers did a very important thing. They made the impossible possible. The trade-off you had was you either used the computer, which might have been very unfriendly to use. They had punched cards that this is before my time, but my dad actually did this. He's a computer scientist. And he tells me stories about how he had stacks of punch cards. For his thesis, he made an operating system on punched cards, and he had stacks of these. And he said the worst day in his life was when he dropped his stack. And because the order is important, apparently, and you're just like, there's cards with holes in them. But the stuff he was building, the stuff he was using computers for, he couldn't do with anything else. So back in the day, it didn't matter how difficult computers were to use. They did an amazing thing. They made the impossible possible. It didn't matter if it was difficult or not. And that I call the age of features, where features were important, where a new feature meant you could do something you couldn't previously do. But we've come a long way since the age of features. This is not a scientific graph. It's just something I drew in Keynote. But the price of computers and software has plummeted, while at the same time our computing power and the amount of options we have open in terms of software, in terms of technologies and tools, has just skyrocketed. What's happened is we've ended up in a commoditized industry. So what's a commodity? It's any product that has a set price, right? Coffee is coffee is coffee. But there's a certain type of coffee that we're willing to pay an additional amount for, a ridiculous additional amount sometimes. Why? Cell phones. Cell phones are commodities today, right? In the UK, you get a cell phone free with your plan. You get a 12-month or 18-month contract, and you get a free cell phone with it. But there's a certain cell phone that we pay an extra amount for, that we crave, and we're willing to go and say, no, this is not a commodity. We're going to pay extra for this. Why? And how did the same company do the same thing with the MP3 player? How did the same company achieve the same thing with the personal computer, and then again with tablet computers? I don't know about you guys, but I think they're onto something. But what separates them from the other guy? I love that photo. What makes them so different? I could just leave that slide on there. I'm done. Thank you. In other words, what is the differentiating factor? The differentiating factor in the industry that we're living in today is user experience. In other words, when infrastructure is commoditized, the differentiating factor becomes user experience. That's the one thing you can't commoditize. And that's the one thing that we can use to set what we do apart from what other people do. So great. All we need to do is create great user experiences and we're set, right? I don't even know how to define a great user experience, though. I can define the opposite. I can define a bad user experience by how it makes me feel. Feelings. It evokes feelings and emotion in me. Who gets frustrated at a bad user experience? Who shouts at their computer, their cell phone, or whatever? Yeah, it's emotional, isn't it? You don't just go, oh, well, that didn't work. Oh, try something else. You go, oh, why didn't that work, right? You get frustrated. And that's not a good thing to be doing every day, really, if that's the type of experiences you're having. So we can at least, at the very beginning, try not to drive users crazy. That's a great first thing to aim for, first step to aim for, right? Don't infuriate the user. And it's remarkably simple to achieve this. Okay, it's not. But the one thing you need to do, the one thing you need to concentrate on, is worrying about the right thing. And the right thing to worry about is your user's needs, not your needs. And what do I mean by that? What do I mean by worry about the user and not yourself? If you're starting on a new project and the first thing you think of is, what's my database schema going to look like? Am I going to have 3 tables to do this? Is it going to be perfectly normalized? Stop. You're thinking about your problems. You're thinking about your own needs. You're not thinking about the user. So if you're familiar with the terminology, this is inside-out development versus outside-in. You're starting within the system, inside the system, and then you're working out. You're solving all of your own problems first, and then you're getting to this outer layer where you're thinking, oh yeah, by the way, someone's going to use this, some schmuck. I better think about them. Wrong time to be doing that. We should really be starting from the top, from the outside, and thinking, what are our users' problems? What are our users' needs? And then, if you do that though, if you do worry about the user's needs first, that's going to create more problems for you. But that's okay, because our problems don't matter. The user's problems are what matter. It requires focus. Getting this right requires focus, not just by the one interaction designer in your team, but by everyone in your organization. Focus on one thing, which is delivering quality over quantity. So not 1,000 features that some of them work, some of them don't. 3, 4, 5 features that work beautifully. Quality over quantity. The quote I love about this is by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, the author of The Little Prince. And who's read the book? It's a beautiful book for those of you who haven't. Get it, read it. He says, perfection is achieved not when there's nothing more to add, but when there's nothing left to take away. Quality over quantity. A case study, a very short one. iDVD, the Mac app for burning DVDs. Apple purchased a company run by Mike Evangelist, and he recounted recently in Fast Company how they were preparing for this meeting with Steve Jobs, where they were going to pitch their idea for iDVD. They had a product, they were going to make it into iDVD. And so they went into this meeting having prepared, because they're meeting Steve Jobs, they're going to pitch the idea to him. Having prepared, they had reams and reams of documentation, they had wireframes, they had all these different screens laid out for how iDVD would function, and they were very confident. They went in there, they rehearsed their speeches and everything. And apparently, Steve Jobs walked in, and he went up to the whiteboard and he drew a rectangle. And inside the rectangle, he drew a button and wrote "burn" on it, and he said, the user drags the video into the window and presses the burn button, and that's iDVD. That's the kind of focus I'm talking about. Focus on exactly what the user wants to do with what you're building. And that's a very hard thing to do. There is no but in user experience. And what I mean by that, if you've ever been in a meeting where you went, okay, here's a really simple design that we've created. How cool is this? This is going to be great. And then someone in the meeting goes, yes, but our partners, how about this other need that we have that's not directly related to what the user needs? And at that point, that's where your beautiful design starts breaking down. You start compromising. And when you do that, it's fine. You're thinking about your own needs. You're solving other problems. But don't be surprised if at the end, the users don't love your product. Design is also not democratic. It's not something you do in a committee. Design is a dictatorship. And you need focus. And you need someone who says, no, 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 no. Design is about saying no way more than saying yes. It's about focus. It's about worrying about the right thing. So we do that. We worry about the right thing. And we can get to the point where we're not driving people crazy. And we call that point usable. And as Aaron said, and as Kenneth loves to say, my friend Kenneth Bowles, who has a new book out, Guerrilla Usability Testing, check it out. Usable is akin to edible. So you heard Aaron talking about this on the first day. I mean, seriously, if I could be anyone else, I'd probably be Aaron. And so we just see so eye to eye on things. It's awesome. You in the room, Aaron? Hi, wherever you are. Or sleeping, which is clever. So Aaron presented you with Maslow's hierarchy of needs yesterday. And that's a great way of thinking about it and how it translates to what we do. Because, as Aaron was saying, unless you reach that point of being usable, where you're not infuriating your users, the rest of it doesn't matter, right? It actually becomes a joke if you do the upper bit before you're at the usable, right? People are like, wait a minute, are you taking the piss? This doesn't work. And you're kind of like, you've got this furry little creature that's trying to talk to me? No. So getting to usable is very important. But nobody wants to go out, seriously, for an edible meal, right? You don't say to your partner, you say, darling, tonight I really feel like something edible. What do you think? Let's not get poisoned tonight. Sounds like a great idea. Yeah, that would be great. No, you want something special. You want atmosphere. You want to go out for an experience, right? And you're willing to pay for that. You're willing to pay far more than the cost of the food to get that. So while edible is great, we can go beyond edible to pleasurable. We can go beyond edible to beautiful. We can even go beyond edible to delightful. Delight. It's a very powerful word. And this next word, unfortunately, Apple has kind of ruined for me with their recent advertising, but we could maybe even go beyond edible to magical. And I don't use that word lightly as a marketing gimmick. Think about why you are all here. Why are you sitting here when you could be out working? Why are you here to learn more about something you're so interested in? That you will take time out of your lives to come here and spend 2 days or 3 days. What made you get into doing what you're doing? What made you do what you love? What made you start? That magical thing. Was there one? I know there was for me. It was the first time I got my computer. I was probably 10, I was 7. I was 7 when I got my first computer. And it was an IBM XT. It was like this tin box, rectangular tin box. And it came with a basic manual. And my dad brought it home, and it was an expensive piece of kit back in the day. It had like 640 kilobytes of RAM. It had a 20 megabytes hard drive. 20 megabytes. How could you ever fill that? Really? This is a day of 360K floppy drives, you know? I was like, this is going to last me forever. It's awesome. And it came with a basic manual. And my dad, I didn't realize it at the time, but he did probably the best thing he could have. He put that basic manual in front of me, and he showed me the computer, and he said, you can't hurt it. Just play with it, right? He brought this expensive piece of kit home, and he didn't say, don't touch it. He said, play with it. You can't hurt it by typing on it, right? I proved him wrong later, but I did. Apparently you can, but I won't go into details on that. I don't think he knows still that it was me. And I opened up BASIC and I started typing, 10, print hello, 20, go to 10. And it just went, hello, hello. And I remember as a kid just being astounded. It was magical. I was making this thing do things, and it was doing things, and I wasn't touching it. And then I made it draw stars, and I was like, oh, I've created a universe. It's amazing. This is so cool. That magical moment, think about what that magical moment is for you. Because we today have the power to create those magical moments for other people. And that's an important power to have. That's a lovely power to have. And that brings me to the art of user experience. What is beyond usable? Is user experience an art? Is what we do an art form? It's a very young industry that we're living in. And new technologies are usually misunderstood when they first come out. This is an actual poster from when Edison's light bulb was installed the first time. Do not attempt to light with a match. So technologies are misunderstood. Perhaps more relevantly, when the Lumiere brothers, in 1895, I think it was, displayed their screening of a train coming into a station. The rumor goes, the story is, the myth, that the people of the time were so terrified that there was a real train coming into the cinema that they fled to the doors. Now, this might have been very good marketing by the Lumiere brothers, to tell people how realistic their movie is. But regardless, the fact remains that when film first came out and when photography first came out, we saw them as purely technical pursuits. People actually thought you put a camera somewhere and you captured reality, and that it was purely objective. That's how these new technologies were viewed. And today, if we fast forward 100 years in film, 150 years for photography, we know that it's anything but objective. We've learned to read the text. We've learned to read the medium. And we understand that it's completely subjective. Where you place the camera, what's in the frame, what you choose to leave out of the frame, how you edit it afterwards, all of these things are very subjective. And because we understand the subjective nature of it, we understand that it's not a purely technical thing, we've come to appreciate the artistry behind it. And we reward the artistry behind it as well. We have the Oscars, we have Cannes, etc. And if I say to you today, Woody Allen, you will immediately have an idea about the type of films I'm talking about the type of films that this person authors. The auteur theory in French cinema from film noir, that filmmakers have a signature. What if I said to you, Johnny Ive? Do you have an idea about the kind of products, the kind of work Johnny Ive produces? I do. Is he an auteur? Does he have a signature? Does what he do cross over slightly, possibly, into art? What about in what we do on the more virtual side of things? And what we do is so close to what Johnny does with product design. What about what we do? Who are the auteurs of our generation? Well, I think I'm probably staring at some of them right now in this audience. The art of user experience. User and experience. Right? 2 words, user, experience. Do we even need both words? Think about from the time you wake up in the morning to the time you go to bed at night, how many crafted experiences do you interact with? How many experiences that people have created? Not with people directly, but with the things that they have created, the everyday things that they have created, do you interact with? So here's an example from a recent trip, that trip I took to Belgium. I was going on the Eurostar, which is really cool. If you're ever in Europe and you want to go from like UK to continental Europe, you can take a train, it goes under the water. It's really cool. And to check in, I had one of these kiosks. So I saw this kiosk and I was like, okay, I immediately understand what you want me to do. This is so cool. And I approach things naively as well. I try really hard to approach things naively. And I think it's very important as a designer that you do approach things naively and you hold on to your naivety. Because we can get too knowledgeable about things. And that's not a good point to start designing from. So I approached this very naively and I said, look, there is a big yellow arrow with a card in it and it's pointing down towards that slot, kinda. I know what this wants me to do. It has said hello to me. It has said, hello, put your card in. And so I put my card in. Nothing happened. Thought maybe it's a little slow. I'll wait. It's okay. It's okay to be slow. But nothing happened. So then I was like, okay, I've misunderstood you. Let me look around. And I saw at the very bottom of the screen, touch the screen to start. But that's not what the whole experience told me. That's not what the device, the product itself told me. The product itself said, look at that beautiful visual hierarchy. At the very top, I'm telling you what I want you to do. And it lied to me. at hello. So I got over this eventually and got on the train. And I encountered this door. This door is really cool. You're on the train. I was going to the bathroom, actually, to the toilet. And I realized that if you just slide the door, the handle, it opens by itself. So I was like, yes, this is so cool. I've just learned something. I've learned how to open doors on this train. Look, there's another handle for the toilet that you can slide to open. And I tried it. And I tried it again. And then I realized I actually had to open that door. That made me sad. Because it had taught me something. The train had taught me how to open doors. And then it just threw it back in my face and said, that's not how we do it, really. No, at you though. Yeah. No. So I arrive in Belgium, and if you've been in Belgium, the signs in Belgium are amazing. They're so cool. They're famous. They're world famous, actually. And I came down the escalator, and I'm like here, right in the middle. I'm right in the middle. And I was lost. I did not know what this sign was trying to tell me. Was it, by its natural affordance, trying to tell me that these things were on this side, and that these things were on the other side just by merely being on that side? Right? Or was it trying to tell me that this big arrow actually applied to everything else that came before it? Natural affordances be damned. What was it trying to tell me? And this is how it looks, if that's the case. And that's apparently what it was trying to tell me. But I did not know this, so I went the other direction first. I do try, really try to approach these things naively. Because if you can do that, if you can get all of that learned knowledge out of your head, then you can design when people don't know the language, for when people don't know the culture behind what you're saying. You don't take things for granted, and that's very, very important. And remember, you're trying to communicate, and trying to communicate with people is difficult enough without you making it more complex. It's another sign I saw in Belgium. I think it's pretty evident to most people that stairs can be used both ways. I don't know. So on the way back, I was flying. I wasn't actually flying, I was in a plane. And I saw this vending machine, this poor guy sitting in front of it in the boarding lounge. And he was just looking at this vending machine. And he was kind of looking at it, he was going to put some money in and then stopping. And then, he was talking to himself. So I thought, either he's loony or there's something wrong here. And I really want a bottle of water. So I thought, I'm going to talk to this person. Let's see if we can resolve this. So I went, hey, what's wrong? And he went, I don't know if it's going to give me change. I said, okay, why not? And he pointed to the instructions. And the instructions say, use correct change when indicated or overpayment can be made. However incorrect or no change will be given. This is not some out-of-the-way place. This is a major airport, and that's a Coke machine, you know? I'm not even going to comment on the typeface. I'm not going to. No. But there's this poor guy who just wants a bottle of water, and his life has just been complicated by some horribly written microcopy. These things affect lives. So I was in my... They do, really. So I was in my hotel, and I had a TV there, and this is what the TV said to me when I came in. It said, welcome, dear Balkan, mister. Yeah. I understand what they were trying to do here. You know, I understand that they were trying to be friendly, be human. They failed really, really badly. A blank screen would have been better, right? Because how many times do you go up to someone and say, hello, Balkan, mister. You have arrived. Really? So, user experience. Think about the amount of time, the portion of your day that you spent interacting with crafted experiences. And think, if those experiences are overwhelmingly negative, what that's going to mean to your day. Is it important? Is it not redundant to have user in this term? I think it is. I call what I do experience design. Because what we're designing, think about it. You're spending your day and you're having overwhelmingly bad experiences with crafted user experiences, with crafted experiences. You are going to have not a bad user experience, you're going to have a bad day. The stuff that we make determines whether or not people have a good day or a bad day. And that's why what we do is so important. User experience, it's entirely redundant. What we're doing is we're designing experiences. We're designing the new everyday things. And what we do isn't just about creating user interfaces. User interfaces are just part of the experience. So I build iPhone applications, but I have to think outside the screen when I design them, because I know that my apps will be used in hugely different contexts, and context is very, very important, especially as we move into the realm of mobile devices and mobile experiences. So it's very important to think outside the screen. Don't just think, okay, I do software. That's what I do. I'm worried about what happens in the screen. I don't care about hardware. Hardware doesn't interest me. No. That leads to things like this. It's a bit blurry, so I'll read it to you. This was on my Samsung phone that they gave me, that I've now eBayed. It says, error, no SIM card or phone is turned off. Seriously? Phone is turned, someone typed this in. Someone seriously sat at the desk, got paid to type this in. This is what happens when you have this huge disconnect between software and hardware. We live in a very different age. It's not about how strong is your hardware. Well, it's 50 gigahertz. It's got 50 terabytes of this or that. It's got 50 gazillion. I don't know why I'm going back to 50, but it's a good number. Processors. And what about the software? Well, we've got thousands of new features, John. It's great. You're going to love it. No, it's not about that anymore. It's about a combination of software and hardware to create a unified experience. And if you get that, you're going to be fine. And if you don't, you're going to go extinct at some point. And that's important because the age of features is dead. We're living in the age of user experience. So the art of user experience, what's it about? It's about the little things that matter. This was my first iPhone app. It's called Avit. And it was for scanning in books and checking whether they were online. So it would start up, and you'd get this little screen, get a little blob that's trying to find a barcode. It sees one, it opens its eyes, and then when you scan it, it says, hey, in just a few seconds, I'll see if they have it on the internet, on Safari Books Online. And if they do, you can read it now. You can tap this, and you can start reading that book. So let's say you're in a bookstore or a library, and you want to know if they have this online. You can aim your phone at a real book and then start reading it, right? I thought that was a good idea at the time. And then my local Borders went bust, and I felt kind of bad. But yeah. So they went bust in the UK completely, which is a loss. It's actually a loss. I love real reading spaces. So you could read it now. That's great. So most people, when I show this to them, they go, oh, well, how did you do that? How did you do the barcode scanning? How did you do this? And the hows are not the questions that really interest me or fascinate me. It's the whys. I wish people would ask me why I did it the way I did it. Why are there these little blobs in this app? Really, why? Well, the reason is they're known as delighters. Delight. Again, that word. I want you guys to close your eyes. Close your eyes, seriously. And think about the last time you felt pure, childlike delight. Some of you are smiling. This is good. Hold on to that feeling for a while. Keep your eyes closed. All right? That's a good feeling. Right? That's a great feeling to have. It's a great feeling to create in other people. Okay, you can open your eyes now. For how many of you was this a crafted experience of some sort? Yeah? Some of you? That's cool. Everyone else? Sex? What? No, is it? Okay. It's fine. I don't need to know. I don't need to know. There's someone laughing there. It's like, yeah. Oof, all right, too much information. Sorry. Okay. Delight. It's a beautiful word, and it's a better feeling. Here's an example of a delighter. So this is the page of a holding page for Silverback, which my friends at Clear Left created. And see what happens if you resize the web page. You guys are probably familiar with this. How many of you have seen this? And quite a number of you. Great. Awesome. Paul will be proud. See what happens in the background. That's parallax scrolling with just HTML and CSS. That's pretty cool, right? But when Paul created this, he didn't have it in your face. It wasn't like a flash intro. We are going to bombard you with lots of balls to techno music for 5 minutes before we tell you what we're about, right? Should have thought that one through. No. The site does what it does, which is just to inform you it's a holding page and things are coming and you can sign up. And then layered on top of that is that little bit of pleasure, right? And Paul knew not everyone resizes their page when they come on the site, right? He knew that. But he knew that someone somewhere would. And he'd go, and he'd notice it, and he'd go, ooh, ah. And he knew it wouldn't stop there. He'd go on Twitter, and he'd be like, oh my fucking God, it's parallax scrolling with HTML and CSS, oh, pink ponies. And then all of his Twitter friends would be on it, and they'd be going, ooh, ah, ooh. And suddenly it would blow up, which is what happened. And that's why all of you know about it. That's a delighter. The best example of a delighter I have is an email from Moo. And it says, it doesn't say, it's not from do not reply at moo.com. Right? Like, do not reply at Microsoft. I get those emails sometimes, and I don't reply. It's from Little Moo. And it says, hello, I'm Little Moo, the bit of software that will be managing your order with us. Who's got Moo cards here? Those little half-size cards, right? That's what this is, little half-size business cards. And if you put in an order, and you just got this email, you're going, hello, Little Moo. How are you? And then it goes, I will shortly be sent to Big Moo, our print machine that will print it for you. And you're like, Little Moo's not alone. He's got a friend. And if something goes wrong with your order, you know, and one of your friends goes, yeah, Moo, they must suck, because they... Like, no, it's Little Moo, man. What the fuck are you talking about? Don't be hating on Little Moo. What's wrong with you? It's just little. It's only small. When you build things, don't ask, does it get the job done? Ask, does it give me joy to use? And we need to change our vocabulary. We need to start talking about things like empathy. So here's Avid again. And what happens when things go wrong? You scan a barcode and it says, in just a few seconds, all will be revealed. But the internet is slow. What happens? Well, it adapts to the situation. It's taking a little longer than usual. Okay, that's fine. And it takes longer than that. The internet's slow. And it kind of goes, okay, this isn't making me look good. All right. And it's still not loading. It's still not loading. It starts crying. Right? This is the point where you also are getting frustrated. Right? It's trying to empathize with you. It's saying, I know this sucks. Yeah, there we go. That's what it says at the end. This doesn't mean build Clippy, okay, into your application. That's not what this means, all right? It's about understanding that the stuff that we make has our character in it, whether or not we're aware we're putting our character or our company's character into what we're building, right? And Clippy is Microsoft, you know? I look at Clippy and I see Steve Ballmer in paperclip form staring back at me going, do this. I don't want to do that. Please, don't make me. It's about the little things. So I know I'm a little over time. I'm going to take a few more minutes. Feathers, my latest app. So I know Aaron showed this. I'm not going to go into detail. It's about decorating tweets. But it's about the details that matter. So when you're, and sometimes they can be the simplest things. So to log in, How simple is a login? You enter your username and password, and you're done, right? So that's it. There couldn't possibly be a problem there. However, there was. So this is the experience as it is right now. You enter your username and password, and then you start using the app right away. That's great. The problem was when I started building this is the experience Twitter wanted me to build. They wanted to be, welcome to my app, tap here to launch a Twitter website. And then you would go and do an OAuth authentication, which I read as, welcome to my app, now fuck off. Which is the worst thing you can do. Someone comes to your door and you're saying, hi, how are you? And then you can come back, if you're good. No. And this is where we were sending them to, of all places. You've slaved over every pixel in your application, and then you're sending them there. No. In fact, I said, it's like giving someone a ride in a Ferrari and then throwing them in a mud puddle and then pulling them back in the Ferrari for the rest of the ride and pretending nothing's happened. They're not going to enjoy the second part of that ride as much as the first. No. It's a radical context change. And they fixed the OAuth page, the mobile OAuth page a bit, but still, remember, the interaction is, hello, fuck off. So, they also said, though, if you don't do it, we don't give you the little VIA link at the bottom. So we'll penalize you if you don't implement our bad user experience. And that's the kind of difficult decision you sometimes have to make if your focus is on user experience. So I decided, screw that, I don't want the VIA, and I'll go with the better user experience, which meant that when Stephen Fry tweeted, my life is going around in circles with feathers the week afterwards, exactly 1,365,217 people did not see that it was via feathers. But it's fine, because they talked about it, because the user experience made it possible for them to be interested, to be excited about it, to empathize, and they talked about it. And it's okay to have fun with what you're doing. So the little bird fills up as you're typing him. Aaron showed you that. Also, when you're actually sending a tweet, he flaps his wings. It's nothing special. It just flaps his wings and the tweet goes away. It's gone. And little things that are not as gimmicky. Why did I spend an extra few weeks on making the keyboard behave exactly like the iPhone keyboard, not similar to it? It meant that I had to delay releasing it by weeks. But it's worth it. So these are the reviews that I got. And the words that they're using are adorable, joyful, fun, fell in love with, not like, not use, love. These are very powerful words. And I really love the singing bird when you tweet. That's so cool. The appeal to human emotion. Thank you, Aaron, for that quote. I can't believe you took something as serious as Twitter and did this. Downloading now, awesome. That's my favorite one. Because it's okay to have fun. We sometimes forget that it's not okay. That it's okay. And it got some awards, etc. It's not important. It's not as important as getting that feedback from users. And it was featured by Apple. And you can find out more about it online as well. And I'm going to leave you actually with an amazing example of a user experience. And this was the bullet train in Oslo. To get on the train, you have this e-ticket, and the e-ticket is your credit card. And all you do is you swipe your credit card, you go on board, and then if you want a receipt, you can go online for it. So this is the experience. You see these things, you swipe your credit card, and some people do it, they don't even stop as they're walking, and then you go through the gate, and you swipe your credit card there, and you're out the other side. And that is an amazing, amazing experience. So, sometimes the best UI is no UI whatsoever. And I'm going to leave you, with two dangers as well. Two UX-related warnings. Beware of the weakest link in what you're doing. Your experience will only be as strong as the weakest part of it. And the weakest part will be the part that's not in your control. So don't reinvent the wheel, but beware of third-party libraries and APIs. And by that I mean that you will be at the mercy of the people that you're using the API from. So beware, choose carefully. It happened with Feathers for Facebook, where when it was being featured in Austria and Germany, Facebook decided to pull the plug on it. And if those reviews, the positive ones, are amazing to get and worth everything, more than money, then the reviews like this really make me have a bad day. So if you have APIs, never disable an app without reasonable notice. And if you're going to do it, don't use user experience as a scapegoat for it, because that's what they did. They're like, we're going to protect the user experience. So if you want to learn more about that, look at the dev rights hashtag on Twitter, do a search, and there's, we want to create a Bill of Rights and a certification mark, hopefully, for APIs. And API labeling would be great, so you knew exactly what you were getting into when you were using an API. So you can find out more about those over on the Google group. So in summary, we've come a very long way since the early days of computing, when computers filled up entire rooms, to living in an economy that's completely commoditized, where the differentiating factor is user experience. And while it's very difficult to get to the point where we're not infuriating users even, because we're creating things that talk to human beings, we can, with focus on the right thing, on worrying about the user's needs, not your needs. And remembering that design is not democratic, and that's okay. And being aware of the dangers, like APIs and libraries without source code that you have no control over that might become the weakest link. And we get to that point where we're building usable products that are edible. But we can go beyond that. We can go beyond that to exploring the art of user experience, to creating things that are not just edible, but beautiful, to creating things that are not just edible, but pleasurable and delightful, to creating things that are magical. And that is what you people do. And I can't wait to see the things that you do. And I'm looking forward to that. And thank you very much for having me.